Hi, my name is Diztoh, and I'm going to show you basic crafting in Path of Exile 2 if you're just beginning your Path of Exile 2 journey because of the Path of Exile 2 new league that is coming out, Fate of the Vaal, the Last of the Druids, and you want to get into crafting, or you want to at least learn about crafting. Let's go through the process together, bro. Step by step, bro style. Now, first we're going to make this massive great hammer into a magic item, which is simply an item that has two modifiers, an item that can take a prefix and a suffix, and it also gains a name. Wow, isn't that cool? Going back to the massive great hammer, we now need to turn it into a magic item, and we can see that these orbs have faces in them. The first one being the Orb of Transmutation, upgrades an item to a magic item with one modifier. So that is just what we're gonna do to our massive great hammer, bro. If we press left alt on our keyboard, it gives us a little bit more information, and it tells us that the modifier that we have is a tier 1 modifier, and it's also a suffix, which means that it's one of the bottom 3 modifiers. Moving on to the next step, we will be grabbing an Orb of Augmentation, which states augments a magic item with a new random modifier. So we pick it up and just take it over to our hammer. It added a prefix of fire damage. Now this weapon has 2 modifiers, and it can hold up to 6 modifiers. A magic item, which is a blue named item, can only hold 2, and we need to make it into a rare before we can add more modifiers to it. Now the top 3 modifiers, which are the prefixes, will be mostly damage or base related, depending on what item you're trying to craft on. And then the 3 modifiers at the bottom, which are the suffixes, will mainly be supportive modifiers to whatever that item is. Right, so now that it has 2 modifiers, let's make this item into a rare weapon using a regal orb. It will upgrade a magic item into a rare item, adding 1 modifier. Let's just grab that regal orb and make our item into a rare. Now from here, you also have the option of grabbing a greater essence, and you can just read what it does in it. Martial weapon, increase attack speed. If I wanted this weapon with increased attack speed, I would grab the greater essence and then tag it, and it would make it into a rare item, just like the regal orb. So it has the same functionality in that regard. So it is important to go over what your essences are capable of. However, we're not going to do essence crafting here, just like we're not going to do omen crafting. That'll be towards the end, after school stuff. Going back to the regal orb, which makes the item into a rare and adds 1 more modifier, we can see that our item now has a yellow name, which indicates its rarity. By pressing left alt for more information, we can see that it now has 2 prefixes, which means it can only take 1 more prefix and 2 more suffixes. In order to do that, we can grab a greater exalted orb. It augments a rare item with a new random modifier. Now on mouse and keyboard, if I press and hold shift and pick up the greater exalted orb, I can add more than 1, and then we can just keep adding, right, until we have our 6 modifiers. Now you can see that we have 3 suffixes and 3 prefixes, totaling to a max of 6 mods. Sometimes you'll see items with hybrid mods, so it looks like they got extras, but 6 modifiers is the max on any given item. However, some modifiers are hybrid, and the way you can tell is on the right side. You can tell their tiers, and sometimes it'll be combined. For instance, if I go over to my chest piece, you can see that the tier 1 is combined with this line of text on top of it, and there is no break in the middle the way there is between each individual tiers. Now that we have our 6 modded item, we can now go over the Chaos Orb. It removes a random modifier and augments a rare item with a new random modifier. Again, if I press and hold shift, pick up my stack of Chaos Orbs, we can just slam it once, and it already removed something, which I believe was the fire damage, but we will hit it again with another Chaos Orb, and it'll just keep rolling these modifiers. And so again, like I said, it looks like it just picked up another modifier, but we picked up a hybrid mod right there. Things that you would be looking on any given weapon would be dictated by what you're trying to craft. If you were, for instance, a titan looking for a weapon and you're looking for physical, then you would be looking for physical mods. So you would just be chaos slamming until you find physical mods. So now that we know what a Chaos Orb does, we can go over the Divine Orb, which states that it randomizes the numeric values of modifiers of an item. So again, if you press shift and pick up the stack and you hit your item with a Divine Orb, you can see that some of these mods values changed, and then you would just kind of keep going. Now, a lot of people don't really waste Divine Orbs on items unless they're already super crafted to min-max the modded value. However, the Divine Orb is important because a lot of people use it for trading in the the end game. Now going over the Orb of Annulment, it states that it removes a modifier from an item. So if I were to pick up the Orb of Annulment, and as you can see, it removed a modifier, and now we have room for one more. So we can hit it with the Greater Exalted Orb, and it picked up lightning. Also, that's just a small example of what you can do with the crafting. Remove mods, roll the mods, remove them, add them, and all of a sudden you start having a nice weapon in your hands. Moving on to the Vaal Orb, this modifies an item unpredictably and corrupts it. Now, what does it mean to be corrupted? Corrupted items can be found corrupted or made corrupted using a Vaal Orb, changing their properties unpredictably. Most methods of item crafting and modification cannot be used on corrupted items. There is no penalty for using corrupted items. So what it is saying is that pretty much when I use this Vaal Orb on this item, it locks off all the modifiers and I can no longer craft on it. But you also want to make sure that you can no longer add anything to your Massive Great Hammer, or that you're very satisfied with it before even attempting to Vaal Corrupted. Now, why would you want to Vaal Corrupted? Because sometimes when you corrupt an item, it grabs an extra socket or even an enchantment, which is pretty much a modifier that goes up on top. Just like my 25% increased physical damage on my bow, which when I corrupted it, it picked up that enchantment mod. However, we're not gonna corrupt our Massive Great Hammer just yet, because we still need to add sockets to our hammer, and the way we're gonna do that is by using the Artificer's Orb. So we pick up the stack and then just tag it once. Hammers can take 2 sockets, but it cannot take a third. However, there are special items that already come with a third socket without corrupting them. Now, if I wanted this item to potentially have a third socket, I would risk my item by corrupting it with a Vaal Orb and hoping to get a third socket. These are special items, however. Exceptional items just either come with greater quality or a +1 extra socket. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about regular crafting. Now that we have sockets on our weapon, we also need to increase the quality. Right now, it doesn't have any quality, but it can go all the way to 20. Quality grants small bonuses to an item depending on the type of item. For martial weapons or the great hammer that we're crafting, it gains 1% more physical damage per quality. So we'll pick up blacksmith's whetstones and improve the quality all the way up to 20%. And you can see the damage, physical damage, go up here. Last one's going out. And there we go. Now we have a Massive Great Hammer with 6 mods, quality all the way to 20, and 2 sockets, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Now, I forgot to mention the Orb of Alchemy. This Orb of Alchemy states that it upgrades a normal or magic item to a rare item with 4 random modifiers. And I have a magic item with 2 modifiers here ready to go and get tagged by an Orb of Alchemy. So that is exactly what we'll do. And as you can see, we now have a quarterstaff with 4 mods, and it can pick up an extra prefix and suffix. Pretty decent mods, however, the tiers are just not too good. So something like that is just no bueno. And now we move back to our Massive Great Hammer. Let's talk about the Fracturing Orb, which states that it'll fracture a random modifier on a rare item with at least 4 modifiers, locking it in place. And what does fracture mean? A fractured modifier is locked into the item permanently and cannot be removed or altered. Why you would want to do this on an item is so that it locks up that modifier. Now, that modifier can no longer be changed by any means, which means that if I picked up a Divine Orb and I tagged the item multiple times, the value of every other mod changes except for the fracture. Also, very powerful stuff is that a fractured modifier cannot be removed. As you can see, I just used a bunch of annulment orbs and it will not remove that modifier anymore. Now, to add those mods back, we will be using our Greater Exalted Orbs. And now you know basic crafting in Path of Exile 2. And now, for the last and final step, the Vaal Orb. Let's say, for instance, that you were already satisfied with your craft and you wanted to risk it to make it better. Now, why am I saying that you're gonna risk it? Because a Vaal Orb has the potential to brick an item. How does it brick an item? Say that you had 6 great modifiers and that made your perfect weapon. The Vaal Orb has a chance to enchant it, add a modifier on top, or add a socket, or roll one of your modifiers. It'll change one of these modifiers to something that we don't know. So Vaal orbing is very important to understand that it is a risk. However, that is how great items are made. Now, because this was a beginner's guide, let's introduce omens. Omens are essentially items that help you when you craft with specific things. The Omen of Corruptions, for instance, while this item is active in your inventory, your next Vaal orb will always result in change. So essentially we have 25% chance when we Vaal orb, which is to enchant, add a socket, re-roll a modifier, or do absolutely nothing. And the way we change the odds in our favor is by activating a Omen of Corruption. As you can see, we right click and it activates the Omen. Now again, while this item is active in your inventory, your next Vaal orb will always result in change, which means that it eliminates the option of it remaining the same, which now we have a 1 in 3 chance of getting a socket, a rune, or a rolled mod. And now, and as you can see, RNG still favors me. Now that the item is corrupted, we can no longer modify this item with anything. Because our rune sockets are empty, we can add runes to the weapon, and there we go. And that is pretty much basic crafting in Path of Exile 2.